Welcome to the West Coast Biased. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined by Jason Suke and Nemec. We promised people we would not get excited until 4 weeks in.
Yep.
I have some hot takes this week on these West Coast teams, whether it's college football, the NFL, which we'll get to later. I've got hot takes all over the place.
Yep.
I'm in trouble in terms of I have to wait 2 more weeks to have opinions. I've got opinions now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're 2 weeks in, so I mean, we always say 2 weeks, your eyes can either confirm or they can show you something completely different than what you thought coming in. And when you get confirmation, those are the ones that become very strong. And, and then, other times if you didn't have an opinion, right? You're like, hey, I don't know what to make of this, but I'll see. And I think, there's one here in the state of Oregon where we're both at, where we weren't certain. And after 2 weeks, I think we feel pretty confident that is indeed what we see.
Well, we'll start with Oregon.
69. Start with the good.
Yeah, and we'll get into Oregon State really extensively. We both have watched Washington. A lot to say about Washington. Washington State's doing great, and we'll also get into some national. But I do want to start with Oregon because that is the story. 69-3 over Mike Gundy. Not only Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State team, I should say. Not only did they thump them, they may have put a final nail in the coffin of Mike Gundy's tenure in Oklahoma State.
Well, Mike Gundy's kid went on Twitter. I don't know if you saw this, but put like a huge manifesto, basically, and he said, and I quote, Mike Gundy is Oklahoma State football, and laid out the resume and then deleted it like an hour later. I love that, by the way. Tweets last forever. You don't think someone screenshotted that? Good one. But yeah, put out this big, huge kind of 5-page tweet sort of thing, basically saying, how dare you question my dad and blah, blah, blah. And then obviously deleted it. So those are the sort of games that get people fired. And it was a purpose pitch. That was going to be an ass kicking regardless. It was just a bad weekend to be OSU in the state of Oregon. Both of those squads, but why would you knew what was coming when Mike Gundy started with the money stuff and that you should play someone commensurate more to what you spend. He knew it was coming. He told you it was coming. And Dan Lanning, you thought, is there going to be a level of respect there? And does he call off the dogs? No, you poked the bear. That man is a Michael Jordan-esque freak. He will use anything as motivation. The players after the game were saying, you don't talk to our dad that way. That was a personal moment where they wanted to make sure if you want to come into our house and you want to talk crap, this is what happens. And this is bad. That's as bad a beatdown as I've seen at Autzen Stadium in years. And that includes when the Tallahassee JUCOs come to town.
I think, we early in the season talked about 10-2 as a real possibility. And I know there was a lot of pushback from Oregon fan that's like, how could you possibly think that? This team is so loaded. My reasoning at the time was they're really relying on young players. They need young guys to step up. They need Dante Moore to hit the ground running. Yes, we think he can be great. I had heard and reported on this podcast rumblings that he processes better than Dylan Gabriel already. And I thought, is that hyperbole? Is that real? Then we started to hear maybe running back by committee because Mekhi Hughes wasn't great. We were a little worried about this receiving core. I still have questions about the receiving core. I still wonder in huge games if they have a guy that can carry the ball 20 times for 130 yards. I don't have questions about this Oregon team being elite anymore. No. They're so deep. They're so physical. They rotate in, and they get 2 pick sixes late in that game from Jerry Mixon, who's a phenomenal big-time prospect out of California. Then Peyton Woodyard. Peyton Woodyard comes in. He was the U.S. Army All-American Man of the Year in 2023. Not that he's an afterthought, because he's not. He's a good football player. But when that's your, late in the game, insert the guy in, he's the Man of the Year, you're so insanely deep. They're incredibly physical. Kenyon Sadiq is a George Kittle level blocker at the college football level who also makes plays like George Kittle. That's the comp, is he's like a George Kittle on the field. They're unbelievably talented. They're unbelievably bought in. The attention to detail with the blocking from the receivers downfield, from the tight end, from everybody. They are just a professional looking outlet. And I just don't see, and by the way, Penn State, I've watched Penn State. You've watched Penn State.
Yep.
That's going to be a loss. I don't think that anymore. It's going to be a coin flip, if not something else. Am I going too far in 2 weeks? This Oregon team to me looks so incredibly good everywhere.
No, I mean, granted, they've played nobody, right?
But to some extent, they made
yes.
Oklahoma State look like a
nobody. And this is where I will give you it. So I'm saying they haven't played anyone, but neither's Penn State. And Penn State has not looked very good. Now, Ohio State was tested against Texas, so give Ohio State their flowers. LSU played Clemson and passed, so give them their flowers. Same thing with Miami. They've actually been tested, okay? But Oregon, in their 2 games, to me, looks like the best team in the country. And honestly, I don't think it looks close. So now we have to get, and this is where the 2 weeks is, put a pause, you have to wait 4, and I really think you have to wait 5, because I think that 5th game is Penn State. But if you're taking opponents away and you just say who looks like the best team in the country, it's Oregon. I don't know what you want to nitpick. They look fast, they look athletic, they swarm. It's effortless. Look, say what you will about Oklahoma State, and again, Mike Gundy is probably on his last legs there at Oklahoma State this year or next year. I'm not sure they get that thing turned around, but it's still a Big 12 team. It's still a team that has a real NIL budget. And they were made to look absolutely silly within 3 minutes of that game. And I've been parts of these. I've been parts of these both ways. I've been on teams that were Oklahoma State, and I've been on teams that were the Oregon. You're the hammer or the nail, and you just know you cannot compete. You can't. And Montana State looked that way. And look, we've seen some FCS teams, the South Dakotas and North Dakotas and Montana States that can be scrappy and can hang around. We've all seen it. And Montana State they said it after the game. They're like, we don't belong on the field with them. There's levels to this. That's what they said.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma State was worse. I actually think Oklahoma State looked worse against Oregon than Montana State.
Oh, beyond any shadow of a doubt.
So, I mean, I will put a pin in all of this, because the Penn State game can roll through and change all of that, because the next 2 games, Oregon's going to win by as many as they want. I promise you, Northwestern and Oregon State are going to shut the hell up and not say anything, and hopefully just take a 55-0 ass kicking and move on down the road. You don't want to piss that side off, but I'll tell you right now, I went into that game. I went into the Penn State game like you, thinking, you look at this new quarterback, Drew Aller, at Penn State, everything's back. It's the most complete team in the country. They're picked to win the Big Ten. That's probably a loss for Oregon, and it may still be, but I'm not picking it. I'll tell you right now, whatever that point spread is, I haven't looked at the headline. I don't know what the spread is. I'm assuming Penn State's still favored. I'll go ahead and I'll put my sawbuck down in Oregon. Oregon will beat Penn State. Oregon just they look the part. And that's all the information I can go on is what I have. And so as that information rolls on, I can change, I can evolve, because maybe that Penn State game just wakes you up, or maybe there's some injuries or whatever. But I am beyond impressed right now with the speed, the physicality, the depth. They just look different. And sometimes the eye test, they say the big eye in the sky doesn't lie. Well, when I watch this and I go back and look at their games, it looks different. It looks like one of those teams, and we've seen these teams in the past, in college, where you just look at a team and you're like, my God, like that's cooking.
That looks different. Yeah.
So when we look at teams that are up there, when you watch, Clemson has certainly struggled, but even, Texas, I watched Texas this last week, and they looked fine, right? I mean, they're fine. They played San Jose State in 38-7. They don't look like this. Texas doesn't look like this. I just don't know right now with my eyes if I see a team that looks better. Now, to be fair, I guess I haven't laid my eyes on Georgia too much. I think they played Marshall and Austin P, but that was 28-6, and I didn't watch any of that. But it was 28-6. So I don't know. I don't know where to go with this, other than to tell you with no bias. And me, I'm not a homer by any stretch of the imagination.
No, people think you hate Oregon sometimes when you're honest. Yeah.
And it's an honest opinion. And I'm telling you right now, if I had to tell you, if it was my vote, if I was voting in the AP, and because I hate all this preseason prejudice crap, throw it out. I don't care. And I'm going off of 2 weeks. Right. Well, maybe, you know what, I might bet Southern Florida, because they actually have the 2 best wins in the country. I mean, honestly, if you want to go with it's been on the field, it's South Florida. They beat Boise State, who was a top 25 team, and they beat Florida in the swamp. South Florida is my number 1 team.
Utah want to go too.
So I'm going that simply because that's that they've actually earned it. But my number 2 team in the country, because of what I've seen, it's Oregon. Oregon looks like the best team in the country. They just haven't played anyone. And Just let's fast forward this and get to Penn State because I want to see it. I want to see if what my eyes are telling me these first 2 weeks is a lie, or if this is real, because they will tell you right now, they will beat Penn State. They're going to go into that whiteout and they will beat Penn State.
Well, let's go over it position by position. I think that's the best way through 2 weeks, because it's like, hey, we had questions and we didn't say they're bad. No one said Dante Moore was bad. I think I had the most negative opinion, and I said they'd get a B+ or A- from him, and said he's a future first-round pick at the start of the year. So let's just go over it position by position. Are they better or worse than we thought coming in? Have they answered the question? I think that's the best way to analyze them through 2 weeks. Yeah. Quarterback, I don't speak for you. I speak for me. Dante Moore is as arm talented as I anticipated. He's processing a little better than I anticipated. I still want to see when he gets heated up, but I did think we'd see some unevenness. I thought we'd see some inaccuracy at times. We really haven't seen that. He's been an A+. I thought he'd be a little more uneven. He, to me, we keep talking about Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik and John Mateer and all these quarterbacks, Norris Sellers and all these guys. And some of them look good, some of them haven't. Dante Moore firmly belongs in that discussion as a real, legitimate quarterback prospect. You do not see guys who are as athletic as him, who are his size, who spin it the way he does. I had a friend point out, a family member point out, that he throws those wide receiver screens and they come out so quick, and they always lead the running back or receiver. Any swing pass, there are so many guys that have a rocket arm that screw those up. They launch them in there. They're not real catchable. They lead the guy backwards, and you don't maximize the yardage. That's a little thing, but that's the whole point about this Oregon team. There are so many little things that I kind of look for to say what makes you special. And Dante Moore, to me, has shown that at the quarterback position.
Oh, he ripped. Was it 60-something yards? The one he ripped over the top. I mean, I guess I didn't realize how big he was.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah, when I saw him play at UCLA, and again, maybe this is just recency bias because it's like I think he played 5 games, 2 and 3. So it wasn't like I was watching every UCLA game, but I guess I didn't realize how thickly he is built. When I remember him down at UCLA, and granted that was 2 years ago, he probably put on some weight. I just remember him more of a taller, skinny kind of kid, kind of built like Nico is down there at UCLA. By the way, Nico, how are you enjoying that UCLA money that you got? Congratulations on that. He's built more like DJ, like Uyunglele. He's thick.
I don't know why you try that. Come up with a different example.
I like it. DJU. Uyunglele. I don't know. He those Polynesian names.
I know.
Yeah, he looks really good. And again, we've yet to see him under any sort of pressure, but he looks really good right now.
That's the final test. Running backs, to be honest, they're deeper than I thought they would be. De'Aaron Hill and Jordan Davison are more ready than I thought they'd be. Their high end, to me, is worse than I thought it would be. I thought in the summer that they would have a 1-2 punch with Mekhi Hughes and Noah Whittington, and they'd get that real physical between the tackle guy and Hughes, who could run for 1,000 yards, and Whittington would be that change of pace back. Whittington's taken on more of the load, obviously. Yeah. We started to hear in fall camp that Mekhi Hughes was not going to be much of a factor potentially. And that surprised me so much that I kind of didn't go full bore, because it's a 1,400-yard back-to-back years, and you hear he may not be in the rotation.
9 carries, 9 carries, 30 yards.
Is someone messing with me? But I still think they need to sort that room out. I don't think they know exactly what's going on with that group. I do think guys are starting to separate. Like Harris and Hughes seem to be more garbage time. Yeah. They're not doing much with their garbage time carries. Lamar, Whittington, Davison, De'Aaron Hill, that feels like the quartet that you feel good about. I still don't know if you have an alpha in that group, but Whittington sure looks the part early, against garbage teams.
Yeah, I talked to Lanning on my show. We have him on every week on my show on 105.1 The Fan, Primetime with Isaac and Suke. Tune in. And he basically said there's carries to be had. I mean, that's all it is. There's a competition, and I did ask him, and he kind of alluded to the fact that you all want these things to play out, and they will play out. They will shake out. I'm guessing by the time you get to Penn State, there will be a firm rotation. And you're right. I think you're already seeing maybe 2 of the guys, and unfortunately for Mekhi Hughes, he's one of them. I just don't think he is going to be a factor. We thought maybe that first week being the fifth guy to get a carry. Maybe that was a purpose pitch, like, hey, figure this out. And I don't think it was. I think it was just he just isn't earning carries, and it's a deep room. Like I said, maybe not. It's the one group where I don't know if there's a star. How about that? It's the one group on this field, both sides of the ball, by the way, that I don't think that there is a star. I think they're solid, but I don't think there's a Bucky Irving in here. I don't think there's a Jordan James. I don't think there's Jonathan Stewart. I mean, there's
I think there is. I just think they're young. I think De'Aaron Hill is a first or second round pick at running back. Sure. I think he's that good. He's just young.
Sure. Yes, I guess that's my point. This year.
Okay.
This year. I don't know if there's one of those guys right now that I will say at the end of the year, you circle him and say that's an all Big Ten performer. How about that? That turns out to be something special. And that's the one group I'll say that about. Everything else, it's an A plus.
Wide receiver, they're about where I thought. DeCorian Moore, I see, and this is where I kind of am cheating a little bit. I've watched him a lot.
Yeah.
They played a huge game in Texas. Two of the best teams in Texas played against each other. Everyone thought it'd be a close game. He had 3 touchdowns, I think, in the first quarter, 3 long touchdowns, and just put them away by himself. Yeah. Just 3, and you go, okay, this is supposed to be a game. Yes, most of the teams you play in high school, you smoke. If you're playing one of the best teams in Texas, they're also very good. And he was at Duncanville. I think it was DeSoto. And he had 3 touchdowns right away. The game was over. And you go, this kid is just different. So I knew he'd be very special. I'm impressed with Malik Benson so far. I think he looks a little better than I thought. I thought that was kind of a flyer because he'd not really done much at a couple different stops. He looks a little more polished than I thought. I think Gary Bryant Jr. is good at some of the underneath stuff. I don't think you have a go-to 8-9 catch every game guy. I don't know if you need that with what they do offensively in Stein's offense. I think this group's about as good as I thought, but only because I thought DeCorian Moore was him before the season started.
And I think by the end of the year, I think DeCorian Moore will be that guy. I do. And that's why I said I don't know if there's a star in the running back room this year. I'm guessing as this thing goes along, I mean, the first 2 weeks, it's 2 catches, 1 catch, 3 catch, 4 catch. Just it's a death by 1,000 paper cuts. I'm guessing that when you need them, there will be 2 players in this squad, and I count the tight ends and the receivers. And Sadiq and DeCorian Moore will be him by the end of the year. And Sadiq already is. They just, again, there's only so many times you can get him the ball because it just, what do you do? There's just right now they're just spreading it around. But when they need to, I think 18-1 will be where you go with that football, and I think that's a very good place to be.
DeCorian Moore, I think the thing that I'd really want to press upon people is he's doing a lot of the little things. He sets up guys in open space like a running back. If you saw him just run the ball in open space, you'd say he played running back in high school because he knows how to set guys up. He didn't. He's just a receiver punt returner freak. He's just off the charts, man. His blocking, the attention to detail, the willingness to do that, the fact that he came in as the backup punt returner, in the second half, and really gave an effort to try to house one, and he couldn't get to the edge, but he tried. He cares so much. He's such a student of the game, and you heard that when he was in high school that he's got an extra layer. I didn't know it would carry over the way it has to his run blocking, to some of his pass blocking. He does all the little things, and that's the thing that this Oregon team is so impressive. They're playing bad opponents where you can get sloppy, and you'll still win by 5 or 6 touchdowns, and they just don't allow it. It's not allowed. You don't see procedural penalties when they rotate in the second and third string guys. They're buttoned up from top to bottom. DeCorian Moore, people need to understand he's doing some things that even if he weren't an electric playmaker, if he were just the scrappy walk-on that came in, you'd go, that dude's going to earn more time. He blocks his tail off, except he's also potentially an elite receiver who's going to be a first-round pick someday. I'm just so impressed with him. Yeah. I will let you take the Kenyon Sadiq stuff. People keep saying Brock Bowers and all this stuff. He's George Kittle, and he's off the charts, man. I thought he'd be good. Holy cow.
I mean, he's not the 6'7" guy that I guess some people are looking for, but he just is physically impressive, and he is mauling people in the run game. Go look at it. And I know, he made a couple catches. I think he had 2 catches this week. Last week he obviously had the big touchdown where he just shrugged a guy off, but that's that poor bastard from Montana State had no chance. But you just watch him move. He's going to be one of those guys that at the end of the year, his stats aren't going to blow you away, I bet. I'm guessing this year he'll end up with 35 or 40 catches. He'll have 6 touchdowns, and you'll kind of shrug your shoulders and be like, "What?" And then he'll be the number 11 overall pick in the NFL draft, and because you'll see it. I just don't know how much they will use him in this offense. I don't know how much he's just going to be. And there was, Terrence Ferguson had a little bit of this too. Again, how much did they use Terrence Ferguson last year? His numbers weren't eye-popping. I think he went, in the third, fourth round, if I'm not mistaken. Sadiq he is the total package. He's everything you want. And yes, when you say George Kittle, that's the perfect example because, again, Kittle isn't the biggest, he's not this freaky tight end. He's a little bit of that leaner, but he's as strong as anyone. He moves people off the ball. He finishes blocks. He sets the edge so well. You can even ask me if you wanted to do a little bit of the pass protection, if you want to chip, which I don't think right now they're going to have to. And then when he gets the ball in his hands, he's actually a receiver. He's a matchup nightmare, and that corners and safeties are too small. Linebackers can't run with him. He's a guy that you're going to be able to attack the seams with. He will be the first tight end taken in this year's NFL draft, even if the numbers at the end of the year don't end up being like Tyler Warren at Penn State. Like those were silly numbers, but Penn State didn't have anyone else to throw the ball to. I'm not sure that his numbers are going to tell the story of how good Sadiq is.
From a pure evaluation standpoint, I have him higher than Colson Loveland, who was the first tight end taken in last year's draft. I have him in the same tier as Tyler Warren, to give you an idea. They're different guys, but that's where he's at for me, which means top 10 pick. That's where he evaluates to right now. I mean, he's that good. The O-line, I don't know if we need to spend a ton of time on this. They're deeper than we all anticipated, but they're really good. And we said they'd be the strength, and turns out they are.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens when they play a better defensive line because these, there's nothing. They move guys at will. They open holes. Doesn't matter. Dante Moore doesn't get sniffed. It's that may be the biggest group that I want to see against better competition.
Good. Yeah,
good on good.
Yeah.
Because right now, what this is, it's you're fighting a kid. Like, I mean, you just have it where you just, if you've ever been, if you've ever done any sort of physical competition and against like you're playing basketball against your little brother or you're against your kid, you just back him into the lane and there's no friction there whatsoever for this O-line, but it looks good. It looks deep, big physical maulers, but we'll see.
Defensive line projected to have maybe the best edge duo in the country with Uiagalelei and Tuioti. Defensive tackle was a question. What say you through 2 games?
Again, what do you want to nitpick here? Amari Washington has been, as advertised in week 1, Bear Alexander, who we were questioning whether or not he could light a fire. He had 5 tackles against Oklahoma State. They're playing hard. And again, it's just deep. We'll see what happens. This is, again, one of those, give me someone that can offer up some kind of threat to you. But I mean, you would think that between Montana State and Oklahoma State, that there would be some sort of offensive like production there, and there just isn't. And those are supposed to be 2 good offensive teams traditionally, but you're giving up what I think it's around like 3 yards a carry. I just don't know what. Again, I want to nitpick. They're getting pressure. They're closing down gaps. The defensive tackles are active. We know the edges are really good. Again, I almost view it like the O-line. They're good. Now play me someone that I can actually try to confirm it, because what you're seeing right now is not fair competition. You're just not going to score. You're not going to do much on this front when you're playing these lesser teams.
This is the group I'm most interested to see good on good, because I think it's really easy to physically, especially Amari Washington, it's really easy to physically dominate a child. And that's essentially what it's like for these guys. Yes. What happens when they go up against another good group? Does Bear Alexander start to guess too much? Does he still play disciplined football?
And Amari Washington and Bear both actually take a lot of chances. If you watch them play, they're shooting gaps.
They are.
This isn't just necessarily like me just blowing through someone. Both of those guys are and they're not like Aaron Donald where they're jumping 2 gaps over, but a lot of these are picking a side and they're just beating people right off the snap. And then they're able to close back that gap. And it looks amazing on film, but as an interior offensive lineman, one of these days you're going to find a center or guard that's not going to let you beat that gap. Right. And when you shoot that shoulder and I wash you down, does that leave the big hole there? And so that's one of those, like you said, we'll have to see it when good gets on good. there will be offensive linemen that aren't going to get beat like this. But right now, the interior of this line literally are beating people off the snap and making them look silly.
Linebacker crew looks fast, looks good. It feels like it's weird because the linebackers haven't really had to do much. Like, you don't see Bryce Betcher much. You don't see Devin Jackson. Everything either gets swallowed in the backfield, or if it is a pass play, obviously the secondary kind of has dealt with that. Yeah. It's been a quiet group. They look fine. I want to see what happens when they actually have to do their jobs, because right now it looks pretty easy for those backers.
Yeah, just everything is, like I said, it just kind of feels cruise control. I don't know what you want to nitpick.
Secondary. They were young. We came in saying, how good could they really be when they're relying on this many freshmen? Aaron Flowers, Ife Obigdegwu. I miss that one sometimes. Naheem Offer, Brandon Finney Jr. Those are 4 freshmen. Now, 2 of them are redshirt freshmen, but those are 4 freshmen that are seriously playing. We were a little bit not skeptical. It was just we have to wait and see. And again, that's why we said there might be a learning curve. Doesn't seem like it.
No, they just look deep. They look deep, fast, physical, couple pick sixes. Again, that poor bastard for Oklahoma State. I feel bad for you, man. Again,
the O-lineman was like holding his head up like it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I've yet to see them threatened, and they're not going to be threatened the next 2 weeks. They're just not. So I just and you're getting, you mentioned, you got 4 freshmen in that rotation there. Some redshirt, some true, but a lot of guys that don't have meaningful snaps. And these next 2 weeks and what you've gotten in these first 2 is you just get guys with live reps.
Yep.
I mean, and by the time you get to Penn State, now granted they will not play in an environment like that, but you aren't gonna. By the time you get to 4 or 5 weeks in, you're not a freshman anymore, man. They've dropped. It's time to play big boy football, and so I can't wait for that game, because there will be no resistance these next 2 weeks. You really think Oregon State or Northwestern is going to be throwing the ball all over these guys? We could do this exact same show the next 2 weeks, and we're going to say I'll just rinse and repeat. It's going to be the same thing. They look really deep. They look really young. They're fast. They're explosive. They're not getting beat. They're assignment oriented. And then we're going to say maybe they need to play someone. So just rinse and repeat these next couple of weeks. But really impressed with the youth. And by the way, this is even without McNutt, who was their biggest recruit on that side of the ball on the back half, who's out. Right. There was another guy that you thought was going to come in and maybe he was going to be the decoy and more of that.
Maybe start. I mean,
maybe start.
Safety, yeah.
So, and then, you got one of the best, transfer safeties in the country coming in from Purdue. And it's been really good. How about that? It's just been really good. It was better than I thought. And I thought it was going to be really good.
Dylan Thieneman, by the way, and fans haven't realized that yet because he hasn't been put in a spot to have to do much. He's so good. Yes. He chased down that ball on the sideline that should have been caught and broke that up. And then he also read, I think it was a wide receiver screen. It might have been a swing pass to the running back. Now I don't remember, but I think it was a wide receiver screen. He came from the opposite safety spot and tracked it down for a 1 yard gain.
Yeah.
The fact that he's able to do those 2 things is so special that one body could do both of those things. He's an elite free safety, playing free safety for Purdue as a true freshman. He had over 100 tackles and 6 picks. Then they moved him to more of a strong safety spot for the majority of last year, and he had no picks, but he had another 100 tackle season. Oregon's letting him kind of rover it a little bit in some 4-2-5 looks and letting him just freelance. And he's so smart and he's so talented that he makes plays, and it will come up in bigger games. You'll start to see him make more of an impact. He's really, really good. I don't think people realize how good he is yet. That dude is special. He's probably the best player on their defense, if not Mateo Uiagalelei. Those 2 guys are incredible right now.
Yeah, and by the end of the year, Finney Jr. will be someone that everyone will talk about. And next year, he won't be here for 4 years, but just
3 and done. Get used to it.
So next year, Mark, he'll be a first team all preseason. He'll be a first team all Big Ten player next year going into it. People will be like
nasty.
People will be like, do you see, it's a freshman year and then the name builds a little bit. Next year, he'll be one of those guys you talk like Kenyon Sadiq was, right? Played a bunch last year. But again, numbers didn't wow you. And he was actually the backup, even though Finney's starting. But then you go into this year and people are like, he's going to be a top 10 pick. And you're like, he didn't even start last year. And you're like, he'll be a top 10 pick. Finney Jr. He'll be gone here in 3 years. So enjoy him. You got 2 more years after this.
We're purposely spending quite a bit of time on Oregon, and we will spend quite a bit of time on this next team, Oregon State, because for the next few weeks, we're not going to give them as much time. And to be honest, for Oregon, it's that they're going to skate. For Oregon State, it's that they play Texas Tech and Oregon back-to-back. Yeah. We talked about in the beginning of the year how crucial these first two games were, Cal and Fresno State. The Cal game, they recovered after a really slow start. And you go, man, if only that special teams penalty didn't happen. This week, you say, if only special teams didn't exist. They lose an absolutely brutal game. And Oregon State fan does not like to talk to me. They, like, generally speaking, I'm the negative one. Yeah. I've never gotten more messages. In fact, I think I got more messages this weekend from Oregon State fan than I've gotten in the last year and a half-ish combined that said, please talk about this. Because you will be honest, even if it's hard to listen to, you will be honest. So I want to spend some time on them because it might be that we don't spend a lot of time on them the rest of the year. This was a reckoning, and this is going to have long-lasting impacts for this program and for this athletic department.
Yeah. Remember I said that game with the other OSU is the sort of game that gets someone fired in Mike Gundy. This is the sort of game that gets someone fired in Oregon State. And, Trent Bray is not going to be gone after these 2 weeks, but I think this may be the beginning of the end. Texas Tech and Oregon the next 2 weeks, these will be as bad as anyone wants them to be at Texas Tech or Oregon. If you're Oregon State, you need to do the anti-Mike Gundy. And by the way, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean here. Send an email and just ask if you guys would take your foot off the gas. I call it the Brock Lesnar defense. And that's why if Brock Lesnar ever slapped me, I would just like curl up in the fetal position and like suck my thumb, and hopefully he would like take mercy on me, because you will provide no pushback here. These will be bad losses, and you will be 0-4. And then you're going into Houston, and that game probably decides whether or not Trent Bray stays or not. Because if you go 0-5 at the end of the year, I think you have to make a change. And so Fresno State was a must-win game. It just was. It was an absolute must-win game. We said it. And to say that, after a one game that there's a must-win, but you look at the schedule, you have to do it. You have to, because after the Cal game, you had the owner of an Angie Machado Beaver Blitz that had a scathing piece. Right? The fans were disinterested. It was probably the best home game you have, and the stadium wasn't anywhere close to full. And so Fresno State comes in, a very average team, right, that was now on your level, that 2 years ago you would have been insulted to say that you were the same program as Fresno State, right? And you come in with supposedly with all these advantages, and you spent money, you go get your quarterback, and you come out, and that's a very winnable game. And I don't mean to cuss here. I've never seen a team shit the bed quite like Oregon State shit the bed at Fresno State. There was no excuse for losing that game. None. I mean, Trent Bray, I guess I feel okay saying that they asked the bed, because Trent Bray said it was an effing joke, and he said that on live television.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, I've never, outside of youth football, I have never seen something so embarrassing. 4 snaps, the first one went to the 50-yard line. And the 2 snaps that you did have that were any decent, your punter dropped it. I mean, you want to talk about like a program-defining moment, you'd never want to be the joke, right? This is Bull Durham, Crash Davis, right? They're going to try to make you a joke. Don't help them. Well, when you drop one of the only good snaps that you have, and then you kick the ball off the ground as a punter, which, by the way, is a penalty. I think we all found that out together, right? And you're like, oh, my God. And then that gets returned for a touchdown? I mean, what are you doing? I mean, I don't know where you go right now if you're this program. You got players in fighting. You've got people that run. I mean, people that are supportive of the program. And I would say the Digital Jam is a guy that tries to help run their NIL and kind of set all that stuff. He basically sent a big old manifesto on Twitter, basically saying he's out, calling to the administration for help. I just don't know where this goes. I mean, you have gone in a year and a half from thinking that, yes, okay, you've been relegated down, right? But you have an advantage over all those teams. Maybe it's you and Boise State as kind of the big brothers of the new Pac-12. Maybe
this staff recruited last year's recruiting class in the summer, saying we're going to make the college football playoff because our schedule's so easy and we have a head start because we came from the Pac-12. They said that to recruits. I heard it from multiple kids.
And here you are. I just, I was around, I got recruited. So when I was coming out of high school, that was the end of the Pettibone days at Oregon State. Okay. That's so, to be fair, Mike Riley came in like right as I would already decided where I was going to go. And the Oregon State recruiting pitch to me, and this is hand to God truth, hand to God, when that staff kind of came in and they had like maybe 2 or 3 conversations with me and said, we know you're not coming here, but we want you to know that if something happens and you get hurt, like senior year of high school, we still have a place for you. That was the recruiting pitch that was being sent to me, at the time. And I just remember thinking to myself, wow, like that's how bad this program is. And I'm not saying it's at that level yet, but this is a dangerous time for Oregon State. The new Pac-12 TV deal, we're hearing now that that's around $6 million a year. $6 million, maybe
escalating to 10.
Escalating to 10, but right now it's at 6 million. 6 million. We've heard that in order to sign.
Wait, real quick, let's put that in context for people because people don't know what that is. Yeah. In 2020, the Mountain West signed a deal for $5 million a year. So these have been escalating. These deals have been escalating. To get $1 million more to start in the new Pac-12, they're saying you're at or below where the Mountain West was in 2020. That's what they're saying.
2020. Yes. And so, even escalating up to 10, we know for a fact that some players had to have some of their NIL cut to go out and sign a quarterback, that you went out and spent big money on a quarterback that so far has paid no dividends whatsoever. We see infighting from staff members and players. We're hearing things behind the scenes that players are fighting with one another. You've had a week to prepare. You had a week to know that your long snapper was out, and at no point you could find someone that could snap a football. And special teams, not just special teams this week, but special teams and the coaching decisions last week, a timeout that cost you a penalty. I mean, it's just, there is nothing about this team that looks buttoned up. There's nothing about this team that looks disciplined. There's nothing, other than if you want a positive note, you outplayed Fresno State. You had no business. You had no business. When you look through that, so I guess if you want to say that there's positive from an offensive standpoint, you actually played a nice game, other than the 2 picks, which, again, we'll go back to that.
That's part of who Malik Murphy is, man. I said that in the preseason.
So I guess if I want to try to find one positive, it's that you outplayed them and in almost every offensive category, and you still lost the game by double digits. And I know the pick six at the end didn't affect the actual outcome; it just affected the score. But I don't know. I just can't recall a worse loss for that program. I've been covering them for 20 years, and this is getting into dangerous Gary Anderson.
It's way worse. It's way worse than Gary Anderson.
When Gary Anderson took over, we had a debate on my show. Is this one of the 5 worst jobs in America? And I guess if you want to say where it's worse, because at least then you were in a Power 5. You are not anymore. Not only you're not in a Power 5.
It's worse than it was when you guys had that debate, for sure.
But you're not in the Power 5, but you're not even right now. You're not even someone that you can think about as being one of the better teams in the group of 5. And look up the road. Washington State is in the same boat you are, right? And Washington State's coach left, Dickert left, and they got rated just like you do, and they're in the same financial situation, maybe worse. Remember, was a year ago, they put out a thing, a hiring freeze, and they're in their own financial situation up there. And they went out and got Jimmy Rogers out in South Dakota. And I'm not saying that Washington State's anything to write home about, but Washington State's 2-0 right now, and actually looked really good against San Diego State after only rushing the ball, I think, for 3 yards against Idaho. They put up almost 200 yards against San Diego State, won that game going away. So they're 2-0 right now, and they're not sitting there having these discussions, and they're not having people that cover and that have been involved in NIL. The number of people that are reaching out inside this program that are ringing an alarm bell saying, this is not just about 2 losses. It's not. No, this is about people. This is about people that are close to this program, that are invested in this, that live and die, that bleed black and orange. And they are ringing alarm bells left and right, telling you that from an administration down to the coaching staff and on through down to game day operations and refusing to show reap all this stuff. And the attendants, they are ringing alarm bells that are telling you this is not going good. And it's going to get worse these next 2 weeks.
Well, let's get into this game, because I think I think that we have a tendency to look at special teams, and we should, because Bray was right. He shouldn't have said it, but he was right. I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. For him to say it's an effing joke on live TV, I get it. To be honest, the offense had a ton of procedural penalties at home, right? Yep. We talked about special teams, obviously.
I think they might have had 6, by the way, in this game.
They had 6 issues with special team snaps, whether they were dropped or mishandled or just over the head, 6 of them. At no point, because so your special teams coach is incompetent at that point, right? At no point does Trent Bray pull him aside and say, hey, we're quick kicking. Or, hey, we don't have a long snapper. It's not working in practice. Malik, can you kick at all? Like, the ball's going backwards. So can you kick it where it goes forward 20 yards? Because otherwise it's like a net 30-yard loss. Can we just get it to like breaking even? And if not, we're just going to go for it. And I know that sounds insane, but the fact that you don't have a guy in there that can quick kick, because that's just a shotgun snap, and you have a guy take a step back and kick. Why couldn't you have practiced that? You didn't practice it? So that's a lack of preparedness. Further, you had 7 sacks last year in all of Division I football. That was worse. FCS, FBS, you were the worst at getting pressure on the quarterback of any program in America. You have all offseason to fix it. You've gone through 2 games, and you have no sacks and no semblance of a plan. And that's the group Trent Bray took over because he didn't like where they were headed. That in and of itself, I would say your defensive coordinator should be fired. Yeah. If you have 7 sacks the year before and a new guy comes in and you do nothing creative, nothing interesting, and you have 0 sacks, and not only 0 sacks, but at least if we're going to have 0 sacks, let's have lane integrity so they can't run. You not only don't get pressure, you have no lane integrity. So it's just nonsense out there for your defensive line. And they are allowed on that last drive before the pick 6 that changed the score to just get to the edge, and their quarterback easily runs for first downs. That is inexcusable stuff. All of that is inexcusable. This wasn't just special teams. And the fact that we frame it as special teams, thank God special teams was so bad that nobody paid attention to how disorganized the offense was and how utterly incompetent the defensive line is. Thank God. Because if they just had 3 bad snaps, people would have said, this is a complete program failure. Yeah. All of that stuff, all of it, every single thing is coaching. None of that is player personnel. Your D-line not getting pressure is not having enough good kids. The fact that you can't dial up pressure is coaching. Yeah. Look at Robert Saleh with the Niners this week. They have Nick Bosa and then a bunch of guys that, aren't very good. He dialed up pressure. He created problems for Sam Darnold because he knows how to do it.
They're moving the defensive line almost pre-snap every time, giving you a different look because they couldn't line up.
Just something to look at. Yeah, I mean, just something to look at. Just something for the offensive line to think. They don't have that. No. There's been lots of halftime interviews throughout history. Teams are down 30 at halftime. Teams are down 20 at halftime. I've never seen in my life a coach drop an F-bomb. Yeah. I've never seen a coach lose it, and that's not that important. Except it fills in what we've heard, that Trent Bray is kind of a hard ass, and he doesn't treat people very well. We've heard that. You and I have both heard that for more than a decade.
Many times.
That Trent Bray's not a very nice guy, and he treats people like crap. So I can only imagine what happened when he got back in that locker room. Yeah. Kids watch film. I want to be very, very clear. Kids watch film. They know. By the time they're in college and they're starting, they know what's going on. That locker room has to be looking around going, dude, we got no shot. You didn't plan for special teams. Our offense doesn't know how to line up consistently. Our defense can't get pressure. Yeah, we're trying we're trying, but you're not giving us anything. They know. So for a coach to then go in and get angry with his players is silly. That was on the coaching staff. The players won that game. The coaches lost it. There's no doubt. The other piece, and I have to emphasize this because it's important. Oregon State has pulled the offer and mistreated, and I've heard this from multiple people, the top 2 kids in the state of Oregon who at the time were committed to Oregon State. 2 kids wanted to visit other schools. They're both 2 of the best kids in the state of Oregon, the number 1, number 2, and number 3 prospects in the state of Oregon. They were committed to Oregon State. They were committed to this mess. They said, I have interest in visiting other schools. By the way, Oregon allows this. Georgia allows this. Alabama allows this. Florida, Michigan. Oregon State has decided to hardline this issue. They said they wanted to visit other schools. They said, you're no longer welcome here. And it wasn't just you're no longer welcome here. Those conversations were nasty. It upset people. I'm telling you a thing that right now there is conversation among high school coaches that they are deeply upset with the way Trent Bray's program treats in-state kids. You cannot do that on the field and also build a bad reputation within your home state, because that's your only salvation. Is get the in-state kids to want to play for you.
We got to kind of grow and develop.
But if you mistreat them and they're at two of the bigger programs in the state, and you've pissed off their high school coach, and you've pissed off the kid, and you've pissed off, because of that kid, his trainer and his 7-on team, because, dude, they pulled so-and-so's offer, what are they going to do to me? Yeah. It's a problem. We got a question from the Digital Dam, who you mentioned wrote kind of a manifesto about this whole thing and asked about the administration. And said, what does the administration, how much do they have to blame for this, and how do you fix it? I feel like I have a pretty good answer. I don't know if you want to go first, I'm more than welcome to let you do that.
I'm intrigued by what you have to say.
This administration has hung on to the past.
Yeah. I had an idea where you were going with that.
In an ever-evolving, quickly evolving world of college athletics, Oregon State has been so far behind and inexcusably behind. Not showing replays was a small fraction of the issue. On the day that Oregon and Washington announced they were leaving the Big Ten, Oregon State's administrators told reporters that the Pac-12 was staying together.
Yeah.
They were left out of the conversation, and they had no foresight to even understand, hey, we might be in a spot where 4 years from now, our deal's $6 million and Oregon's is $80 a year.
Yeah.
They weren't aware. Then they get Jonathan Smith, don't have the NIL to support him. That part is not entirely their fault. I want to be very clear here. That part's not entirely their fault. But they don't even consider the possibility that, hey, this is tough to maintain this roster. If he's a hot commodity, he might leave. Didn't even think of that. Then, rather than do what Washington State did and get innovative and get creative and go out and get the up-and-comer. And yeah, you're going to rotate, but you might have really smart minds in there who can really recruit in the meantime. You might have a guy who has vision, who can go get a Cam Ward, who can go get a John Mateer. And even if those guys leave, the 1 year of those guys is still worth it. It still helps you build credit with all the college football. Instead, you go super, super safe with this guy would be a lifer. Part of being a lifer means you have no aspiration to climb. And that can be a good thing in old college football. In new college football, that's a very, very difficult sell at Oregon State. You do not want a guy in his interview to say, where Oregon State is right now, that's good for me for life.
Yeah.
You don't want that because that guy doesn't have the vision. You go get the hot coach. You go get the coach that really wins at the FCS level that's older, and you give him a shot in the FBS. That's the guy you go get. And if you'd even done the smallest amount of research about Trent Bray, because I did do the research when Trent Bray was hired. And I told people at the time, that's going to be a rough hire. He is not well liked. He doesn't treat people very well. And he's not a real connective tissue guy.
But he was a beeve. And that's all they cared about.
But he was a beeve.
And he was willing to not go with Jonathan Smith. It was viewed as he's willing to stick around and not be a traitor, and he's gonna dig us out.
And what if that's not the best thing?
Yeah.
What if that's not the best thing? What if being innovative, what if being creative is a better move? And I think that's where Oregon State put themselves behind the 8 ball even further than the NCAA and the TV deals already did.
I have said this a million times. The worst reason to hire someone is that he is a Michigan man. It's the worst.
It's terrible.
It's the worst reason. When BYU hired Kalani Sitake, who actually has done a really nice job at BYU, go Kalani. And Kalani was the defensive coordinator at Oregon State before he became the head coach at BYU. And he was a really
he and Gary Anderson hated each other.
Yes. And Kalani was a really well thought of defense coordinator. And he was a defense coordinator at Utah and then came to Oregon State and ended up being the head coach. I remember the time saying, I hope that BYU is not hiring him because he is a BYU guy. Now that's a little different because they have to have members of the church and to be the head coach. So it's a very limited pool of guys.
Very layered.
That it's hard. But I remember the time saying, please, just don't hire him simply because he's a BYU guy. And I say this at every turn. Don't hire Paul Wolf at Washington State because he was a Washington State guy. Don't. Chip Kelly was not an Oregon guy. It turned out he was pretty good for them. Now, Jim Harbaugh was a damn good coach. So the fact that Jim Harbaugh was a Michigan man, by all means, great.
But the resume backed it up. You can't hire someone and the number one bullet point is he's from here.
It just, if this is what I've always said, if he doesn't even get an interview to be your head coach, unless he played there, don't make him the guy. Kenny Dillingham didn't get the job at Arizona State because he's an Arizona State guy. He was actually a really innovative, bright, just fireball piece of energy that, oh, by the way, he went there and loves it and wants to succeed there. Cool. But that's not the reason you hire him. It can be the cherry on top. But I just said, if you aren't willing to consider someone, unless he went there, you are making a wrong decision. And maybe Trent Bray proves us all wrong and he gets this thing turned around. But I'll just say this. He would not be the head coach at Oregon State. He would not have sniffed an interview to be the head coach at Oregon State had he not played linebacker there. And as of right now, there is no evidence, and I mean none, that he is the right guy. Now, do you have the money to make the change? All of that, I don't know. I know inside that program, there has to be discussions, and I know it's early on. We'll wait and see how this season plays out. But sometimes when you know, and it's starting to get the feeling that like I said, the alarms, the calls that this program is in trouble, they aren't coming from outside. This is the horror movie. They're coming from within the house. The panic, the call is coming from within the house. And when that's happening this early, this is bad. And if you wait too long and you try to hold on to this and you go into next year and you have another year, and now you've wasted not just the advantages you had going into the Pac-12, but you can't have a terrible season the first year in the real Pac-12 next year. You just can't. So if you go through this season and it ends up being like this, you're going to have some tough conversations to have at the end of the season if you're Oregon State.
And we can let the cat out of the bag a little bit here. I don't speak for you. I speak for me. Yeah. That I had heard that there were some real cracks in the foundation in fall camp. I had heard that way more loudly than I'd ever heard it before. I'd heard it was Gary Anderson a little bit. This was loud. There are issues. There are kids that are unhappy. There are some real holes in this roster. There are some real potential problems here. And that's why I said winning those first two games are so important, because if you are 0-2 and then you get beat by Texas Tech and Oregon, it could fall apart and fracture really, really quickly. Yeah. From a coaching perspective, it's worse than I heard. They are not prepared on any of the three phases of football. And we are seeing infighting. I want to be clear. We saw infighting on the field and on the sideline in week 1.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. I had somebody who covers both teams say, can you imagine the body language of a 3-point game with Oregon and them doing some of the things the players look like they're doing, shouting, getting mad, clapping in faces? Can you imagine that with Dan Lanning or Tosh Lapoy? Could you imagine that? We wouldn't allow it. You would never allow it, and you wouldn't even fathom it. You had players get penalties, and guys were screaming at each other in the huddle while they're trying to call the next play. That happened. I saw it on TV. Yeah. People who were there messaged me and said, they're arguing on the field with each other. Yeah. It's fracturing very quickly, and Trent Bray, if he doesn't correct this very quickly, he's got to go, because you can't piss off the high school recruits. You can't alienate a whole bunch of programs because they think you're not a very nice guy. You can't alienate your team where there's infighting. This is a big problem, and the administration needs to be innovative. You can't hang on to the remnants of what was. You have to get creative. And by the way, I would go get a young offensive mind, and I wouldn't even be opposed to them going after like somebody like Brennan Marion and the go-go offense. It's very exciting. They put up points. Even if the defense doesn't do great, you're going to be in shootouts. It's going to be interesting. He's going to leave. He ain't staying at Oregon State forever.
No.
But you might bring in some cool recruits because he's a young, exciting coach. That's the kind of thing you do.
Yeah, you just got to get over that he's going to leave, because this is just the nature of the beast. This is where you're at. And by the way, most programs, this is where you're at. Oregon's been here multiple times. Mario left. How many coaches? We've had 2 coaches in Oregon leave for, quote, better jobs. So welcome to the world of college football. It is, this is just the way it operates now. You can't operate in a level of fear that someone's going to leave us.
Washington had a cupcake of a game, 70-10 over UC Davis. As it was pointed out, 5 teams, I think, put up 70 points this week.
Yep.
In the top 25, there was a 6th. It was Washington. First of all, put these dudes in the top 25. There's still some questions about the front 7, but good Lord, Washington is better than Illinois, aren't they? I mean, that prediction looks pretty good right now.
They will be there when they play Ohio State. They will put them in the top 25 after next week, because they'll want a top 25 matchup when Ohio State comes calling, and then we'll find out how good Washington is.
I believe with all my heart and soul, we said it in preseason, Jonah Coleman ran last year with a really bad offensive line. He's got a better offensive line this year. Jonah Coleman firmly belongs in the Doak Walker discussion.
Yes.
288 yards, 7 touchdowns. Yes, he's not playing the best competition, averaging 7.4 yards a carry, but you can see how special he is. His blend of speed and power, his vision. Jonah Coleman is the most underrated running back right now in the country. You can keep your Justice Haynes. You can talk to me about all those different running backs that everybody's excited about. Jonah Coleman, firmly in the Doak Walker discussion. I've been so impressed with him. He is a phenomenal running back and not getting anywhere near enough attention for how special he is. Because right now, if you just did how good somebody's been on the field, he's a top 10 player in college football right now. And I know they're playing easy opponents, but if we don't do the whole, christen him before he's even played a game, it's just from scratch Heisman race, he'd be in it. I don't think he's going to finish the year in a Heisman race.
Yeah.
But I absolutely think he is going to belong firmly in that Doak Walker discussion by the end of things.
Well, and we've seen him do it at Arizona. I mean, he's a guy that has been around the block now. Like, this isn't like, where did Jonah Coleman come from? He played behind a really bad offensive line last year, and he ran for over 1,000 yards. I think, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think he had right around 1,500 yards and maybe 7-8 touchdowns. And dude, that offensive line was bad last year that he played behind. And it's a much better offensive line. If you're a Washington fan, week 1, it was fine. You played Colorado State, and Colorado State, they kept it close into the second half. And then you pulled away. You pulled away, and then this game you just dropped the hammer. But you look through some of the grades, with the offensive line is much better. And then the defensive line. Now, again, competition. What do you make of it? But the defensive line got some bodies back. They got a little healthier, and that's the sort of improvement that you wanted to see, and you certainly got it. So I think if you're a Washington fan right now, I actually think you feel really good with where you're at, and that you do have one of the best backs in the country. Your quarterback is going to be special. Maybe it's not quite where you thought it was going to be at this exact moment, but he is going to be a star. It might just take you a little bit. And then now that the defense is kind of coming around, so I think you're kind of on that nice progression slope, but I think you've answered some of the questions. Have we gotten better in this area from where we were a year ago? Are things more buttoned up? Because last year they lost games they had no business losing. And things do look better from an operational standpoint. They do look bigger. They do look more physical. They look like they have better depth. And I think they've got some potential stars, and one true star in Jonah Coleman, and then Denzel Boston on the outside again in the punt return. I mean, these are guys that you talked about that said, in order for Washington to have the year that we think they can have, where this can be a 9+ win team and maybe be in a conversation to maybe sniff at the end of the year, to at least be in discussions as a team in the Big Ten or college football playoff, that you needed some of those young guys to kind of become depth pieces, but you needed your stars to be stars. And there were no 2 bigger pieces than Jonah Coleman and Denzel Boston, and they both look right now, they look like stars.
Denzel Boston is another one. We talked about Jonah Coleman, Doak Walker potential. Denzel Boston might end up being a first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
He's 6'4", 210 pounds. We've seen him go up and get the ball in the end zone already this year. The fact that he had a 70+ yard punt return and looks shifty in space. Do you know how many guys at 6'4", 210 could do that? And the fact that they lose Rome Odunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan, and here's another one, is so impressive. I am so excited about the future of this Huskies program. You mentioned Damon Williams maybe still has a learning curve. He needs to learn to play in structure. But the pieces they have are exciting. And if you're a Washington Husky fan, after last year, they've checked every box you could ask them to check. I still have questions about the front seven. I think that secondary has a potential to be really stout. The offensive line's improved. And you have electricity at quarterback, running back, and your X receiver. I mean, real electricity, like big play potential every time the ball is snapped. That's a pretty exciting team. It's probably not a college football playoff team, but they could win 9 games, maybe flirt with 10 games, having to play a very, very talented Oregon team maybe for that 10th win that maybe doesn't happen, but they're a really good football team. And I think Husky fans should be really excited about the direction of things because they're headed in the right path.
Well, and this is going to be a fun week coming up here because they got Washington State. And, quietly, again, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about Washington State, but look, the Cougs, give them credit. We spent 30 minutes crapping all over the Beavers for the disaster and dumpster fire that is. Well, Washington State quietly has just gone about their business, right? You didn't hear a lot about Jimmy Rogers coming in from South Dakota State, which, by the way, one of the better programs at the FCS level. And they come out in that week 1 against Idaho, which, I don't know what you think of Idaho, but obviously not an elite team. And they win that thing 13-10. I think they ran for 3 yards. And you're like, oh boy, Washington State. And they come out against San Diego State and they put up a nice performance. 36-13. You go from 3 yards rushing. I want to say, I'm going to pull it up here, but I want to say they had, I want to double check and make sure I got this right. Yeah. So they went from 3 yards rushing to 139, and they comfortably pulled away. That game was never in doubt against a team in San Diego State, which, look at what happened with Fresno State and Oregon State. So I give the Cougs some credit. And then they got North Texas, and then we get the Apple Cup here after that. So I'm kind of excited about the potential of that Apple Cup look a little spicy there, because maybe this is then after the Apple Cup. So Washington, I think, has the bye week, and then they have Washington State, and then they get Ohio State. So if Washington State can take care of business there, all of a sudden maybe that Apple Cup is a nice little precursor, a step up in competition before we get to the Ohio State game. So UW took care of business against Colorado State, blew the doors off UC Davis. Can, against what we're assuming right now to be the best of their competition so far, can we see Washington take another step? Can we see them, last year they had no business losing that game to Washington State, but they did. So this should be personal. It is the Apple Cup. Can you kind of put your foot on Washington State's neck and really show that game against Ohio State, that this is a top 25 matchup and that you're game to play the big boys? I think you really have a chance next week for UW to make a statement, like a definitive statement against Washington State.
I was really encouraged by both Washington and Washington State in terms of growth from week 1 to week 2. Yeah. Washington State should have lost to Idaho. Idaho had the ball like first and goal with a minute left and kicked the field goal to tie it. Washington State was able to go all the way down the field in like 40 seconds and kick a game winner. So they won 10-7. It should have gone to overtime or 13-10, something like that. It was a low scoring game. And you go, man, Idaho played them pretty even. For them to clap back and play the way they did was really impressive. Washington similarly, that first half against Colorado State was not pretty. And Colorado State was bad. I mean, they were bad this week. So they pushed through and picked up a pretty easy win in the second half, like you should, and then put the pedal to the metal in week 2. Those are really 2 programs that I thought really did a nice job with that week 1 to week 2 step up, where you saw a real sign of growth, and that's what you want to see. You can struggle in week 1 and pull out a win. Doesn't really matter. You can flush it. Look at Oregon last year against Idaho. Yeah. If you flush it and you come back better, you're okay. And I thought both those programs up at Washington did a great job. I think Washington has a bye this week, and they actually
they do
2 weeks, and Washington State plays like North Texas or somebody. It'd be great if they were 3-0 and Washington was 2-0 in that game. That's what you hope for in the Apple Cup.
Yeah.
Nationally, anything stand out to you? One, it was the worst slate ever. That was embarrassing. I mean, East Tennessee State and Austin P and Grambling. I didn't take a lot from it, to be honest. Everybody won who should have won. Did you take it? Was there anything exciting to you?
The only thing, two things. One, hat off Oklahoma, big win. And they needed it. Venables needed it. And also the Bryce Underwood stuff. Let's tone it down a little bit about, the second coming as a true freshman. He looked terrible.
Or just in general. Arch Manning, Bryce Underwood, we don't have to christen these dudes before they've done anything. Stop doing it.
Kudos to South Florida, huge win. I mean, who saw that coming? So that was a monster. But I guess the other thing that I'll say is, and this is kind of back to our original conversation where, I'm not saying that Oregon's the best team in the country. I think they look like the best team in the country because I've watched it now through 2 weeks. I've watched a lot of football, and not every, Penn State didn't look great. I think they had three. I was kind of keeping an eye on that Florida International game. I was like, really? I think they had 3 or 4 times in the first 3 quarters where they got stopped on downs going for it on fourth and short. LSU kind of had a mediocre game against Louisiana Tech. Georgia only put up 28 against Austin Peay or P, whatever the hell that is. Texas, I thought, looked okay. I didn't think they looked dominant against San Jose State. Clemson, it looked like was going to damn near lose to Troy. So there was a lot of teams that kind of just spun their wheels against really lesser competition. Now, most all of them, with the exception of Florida, just put their foot on the gas and kind of ended up winning those games. But this is where I say give credit where credit's due. So far in those 2 games, Oregon hasn't been sniffed. They've put their foot on the gas from the moment the ball has been kicked. And there is no like, that's kind of ugly or we need to clean this up. So I guess that's my takeaway is that it's early in the year and there's a lot of kind of wonky ball being played. And this is where I'd be careful saying someone's the best team. Oregon may look the best right now, but is there room for Oregon to grow? Or are these other teams that are kind of, first couple weeks, lesser competition, are you kind of sleepwalking through things? And then by the time we get to week 7, week 8, week 9, week 10, you get someone, whether it's Penn State, Miami, Ohio State, whatever, that really starts to put it together. So just remember these are the teams you see right now will not be the teams that you see in the college football playoff. And you should have learned that last year with Ohio State. So just be careful making any sweeping judgments off of what you see these first couple weeks. But that was my takeaway. It's just some sloppy ball against some lesser competition. And Clemson actually may have some real questions. Yes. And we both really liked Clemson. We thought Clemson
to win the national title.
You picked him to win. I picked him to be in the national title game. And boy, I'll tell you right now, it doesn't look great at Clemson right now. But
I meant Oregon.
Well, but you know what? Clemson didn't look good last year either.
That's
at
true.
The start of the year. And by the end, what were we saying? I don't know if I want to play Clemson. So a lot of ball.
One of these things is not like the others. To give you an idea of why people think Oregon looks so good, here's the rundown of just the top few teams and who they played. Even with the score, you'd say, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then the opponent, it changes. It tells a different story. Ohio State won 70-0. They played Grambling. Penn State won 34-0, but they played Florida International. LSU, the number 3 team in the nation, won 23-7 against Louisiana Tech. Georgia played Austin Peay 28-6. Miami wins 45-3. They played Bethune-Cookman. And then there's those scrappy Oregon Ducks. They win 69-3 against Oklahoma State. Not only did they put one of the biggest hurtings on other than Ohio State Grambling, but some of those other teams win by 3 or 4 scores against teams that you would think Oklahoma State on paper would be 4 or 5 touchdowns better than. I think that's really telling. Like Oregon waxed a real opponent. And the Penn States and LSUs of the world struggled against group of 5 teams. At least offensively, you only put up 28 against like Louisiana Tech. You struggled a little bit offensively to get rolling. Yeah. Thank God the slate gets better because if we'd have had this forever, and that's why we spent so much time on Oregon and Oregon State, because if this is what the national slate was every week, we would stick to just a West Coast bias where that was the only games we covered because that was embarrassing. By the way, Arch, for as much as everybody acted like Arch improved a ton, there were some real warts there. He's got stuff to figure out. He is nowhere near ready for the NFL.
No, and he was wincing a little bit a couple times where he's throwing the ball and he's still the delivery. It's this weird kind of funky sidearm thing. I wonder if maybe there's something going on in there. I don't know. I'm not doing the I told you so. I was not drinking the Kool-Aid, and through 2 weeks, it certainly does not look generational to me. But this week we got a couple go Texas A&M, Notre Dame. That'll be fun.
Here we go.
Florida LSU lost some of the steam, but there's that. Miami, South Florida. How about that, dude? I'll tell you, if South Florida finds a way to beat Miami, that's the number one team in the country. I don't give two crap. If they beat Miami,
they have
Miami,
earned that spot at least.
They have earned the spot because they have beaten Boise State, right? They beat Florida. And if they go on the road and beat number 5 Miami, make South Florida the number 1 team in the country. That's freaking nuts. And by the way, don't tell me that you can't schedule anyone. I hate that. South Florida scheduled Boise State, Florida, and Miami. Let's go. That's college football.
Special shout out to Kendall Daniels, the Oklahoma Sooners linebacker, formerly at Oklahoma State. That dude was a former elite safety recruit who was fine at Oklahoma State. He wasn't special. He's moved to linebacker. He's added 40 pounds. He had a couple of massive hits. He was the one in the backfield that nearly killed the poor Michigan guy. Yeah. He flew around and looks like he could be a draft prospect from being a guy that I wasn't sure what to make of. I was really impressed with him this week, and I thought he deserved a national shout. He looks really good, really special. NFL action, we'll get to it in a pod, but we wanted to stick college here. Beavs, hang in there. Better days are ahead, in part because they can't get any worse.
Well, Oregon going to get better the next 2 weeks.
Oregon, your team, probably a real national title contender, a very serious national title contender, and probably will be next year because the team's really young, but special group in Washington. Exciting year ahead. Cougs, win this week. Apple Cup, Battle of the Undefeateds. Could be a lot of fun. Thank you, Suke, for joining me here, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Like, subscribe, share, all those good things.